This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Paul Smith Jr. here in LA. Paul, good to see you. How's life treating you? How are you finding the LA sunshine?
Great, mate. I love it here. Favourite city in the world, bar none. And
Honestly,
yeah, honestly, 100%. I've been here a fair few times now and love it. Yeah, to be honest with you, mate, I'd probably never leave home where we are, but if I had to live anywhere else in the world, or I wanted to, or there's a possibility, it would be here, definitely.
something which you're considering maybe for later into life, or
It would have either had to been early on in life when the kids were just born, so they could settle here, or later on in life, maybe when they get older. But then I'm not going to be one of them granddads who lives in a different country if I've got grandkids and leave my kids here after that job. I think your kids is your job for life in it, so probably be staying home and keep it as a little bit of a pipe dream. But yeah, it's I love it here. It's unbelievable, and got a great boxing scene as well.
Paul, obviously speaking of kids, you have a young charge of your own who you are obviously co-managing in Ziyad Almaayouf. Returns on Saturday for the first time here in America. How excited is he for this prospect, and what are you hoping that he shows in front of that LA crowd?
I hope personally from a managerial perspective that he just keeps his head about him, keeps calm, does the job, focuses on the job rather than the opponent, and doesn't let the occasion overawed him and get to him a bit, because it can with young prospects. He's only 5-0. There's a lot of pressure on his shoulders with these huge Saudi shows at the minute what he's been on, and some of the calibre of some of the shows that he's been on is frightening. But he's a lovely lad. He's learning on the job. You know what I mean? He only had like 4 amateur bouts, as I keep saying, and that will get him to probably about 10 fights on that excuse. We have to learn on the job. He's got to build his reputation as a pro fighter and his career, and build his fitness, his engine, his toughness, his experience himself on the job, basically. But unfortunately, there's no real hiding place on these big, massive shows that he's on. You've got to perform, and he puts a lot of pressure on himself. He's a really good speaker, really good talker, and he gets his point across all the time about the pressure that's on his shoulders with representing the full nation and the Arab world, as he keeps saying. But he's a lovely lad. He's a pleasure to manage, and thankfully he's on these big shows all the time.
I mean, I have to ask then, Paul, if you mentioned there how kind of, because he's learning on the job, he can buy himself a little bit of time, maybe get to 10-0 before he's really thrown into the deep end. But is that something which kind of the Saudis or Turkey is on board with? Because I'm sure that they look at Ziyad as the shining light maybe of the generation of boxers to come through Saudi, and they want him to be the man who this next gen will look up to, so there is that pressure on his shoulders. So is everybody aligned, or do they want to see him move quickly? What's everybody's thoughts from those back in Saudi?
No, from what we know, and from what we've spoke to His Excellency's behind him on that, he knows he's going to take. Listen, what we're asking for also is probably what was the norm when I turned pro, albeit 20 years ago, but even 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, you turned pro, you had 10 or 15 fights to learn your trade, and then you went for it, Hatton, Calzaghe, that type of era. But then it all sort of started changing when the amateurs started really producing on GB and all that, and then you turn pro and you're expected to win things in your first 10 fights. But that's not the case with Ziyad, because he didn't have that amateur pedigree and that international amateur pedigree, which a lot of the fighters in Britain and the UK and the US have. He's learning on the job, as we keep saying. So the whole team are on board with that, and they know that he's going to build up, and then when he's there, they want him to try and be Saudi's first champion, first world champion, first everything. And he is a trailblazer, as he keeps saying, and he is the first and the pioneer to do so. But it's also important that we keep realistic expectations on the early fights, where you've got to learn, you've got to fight fellas with losing records, because they're gonna teach you more in the fight. If you can stop one of them, then brilliant. But realistically, you're gonna go the distance, you're gonna get taken into places that you're learning, and then when you're ready, then you go for them 50-50 fights when it's for titles, and you'll be ready, fingers crossed, because of your early pro fights, and you've built up the right way. But yeah, pretty much everyone's on board with it. There's one goal, and that's to make Ziyad the best fighter that he can be, and every time he does that, he's representing a whole nation and the royal family and the whole regime and set up over in Saudi Arabia, which is now really flourishing and doing big massive things in boxing with as you say, down to Seller and His Excellency and Gia, and they're really putting these big shows on, making all them promoters, not making the promoters all work together, they all want to work together, and they all know it's just business, it's not personal. Let's all make these big fights, we all still make money, we all still prosper, do well, the fans get what they want, more importantly, in them big fights. And boxing's got a little bit of competing to do now as well with UFC and to keep the hardcore fans watching exciting fights between the two fighters that they want to fight each other, and that old excuse of politics is not there no more because of all this.
What's it been like though, from kind of the outside looking in and seeing Eddie, Frank, Ben Shalom now all starting to work together, and obviously the US promoters in Bob Arum and El Heyman and what have you, everybody coming together now. Is it a surprise to you? Do you somewhat maybe in your group chats have a little kind of laugh and a joke about seeing them all work together now?
Being honest with you, when it first got mentioned, I thought no one's going to do that. Their egos are too big, and it wasn't a dig at them. They're all technically probably officially Hall of Fame trainers, and they're all promoters, sorry, and they're all going to go down in history as being very successful businessmen. They've got great companies, they run boxing in a way, and you just think you're not going to put your ego aside, you're not going to drop it, but they all have, every one of them, and how good is it to see? Boxing's great at the moment, and the fights are getting made, and the promoters have sort of buried the hatchet, put everything to bed and put everything to one side, and everyone keeps saying the old saying, but life's too short, and it's great to see, in my opinion. I'm probably a bit soppy seeing it all, but I'm happy seeing everyone working together for the sort of the greater good of boxing, but also there's a pound note in it as well. They're all making money as well, which is what they all want to be in business for. Every one of us goes to work to make money and pay the bills, but boxing benefits, the fans benefit, everyone gets the big fights that they want to see, and it's really exciting times in boxing now.
Final one, Paul, on Zizo before we move on to other topics. Obviously, let's say Saturday goes to plan. You have Joshua-Dubois at Wembley, which is a Riyadh season card. I know that's very quick turnaround, it's not going to happen. But then you have Beterbiev Bivol on the 12th of October. Spoke to Frank Warren yesterday. He suggested he said watch this space on a potential November show. And obviously December you got Usyk Fury too. You expect to see Zizo back out on at least one of those before the end of the year?
So Zizzo's got a choice really in a way that he can either have 8 weeks to the Wembley show, or
Wembley show's potential then.
Still a potential. It's up to Zizzo own buddy. Ultimately, as management, it's not really in any interest to me or to anyone else to say we want you to fight. And it's entirely up to him. If he's ready in 8 weeks, he can fight in 8 weeks. If he's ready in 10 weeks or 11 weeks and he wants that, then he'll go on another one. There's also there's possible shows and dates that he can go on whenever he feels like, really. As I say, which is a pleasure because he is Saudi and because he's one of the Saudi fighters. Again, a lot of pressure, big shows, but he'd be delighted to be on any of them shows, wouldn't he? And I think boxing in the UK would be really good for him, but he's already done that before. This is his US debut tonight, so maybe back to Saudi again on one of the big shows in 11 weeks. But we'll see what decision he makes after Saturday. But all he's thinking about is obviously August the 3rd.
Headline bout on Saturday night, Terence Crawford, Israel Madrimov, a fantastic matchup. As I've said to a few people, it seems to be that those in boxing understand how difficult of a proposition this is for Terence Crawford. Israel Madrimov, not necessarily known to the wider or the casual audience. How difficult of a task at hand does Terence Crawford have in front of him on Saturday night?
Honestly, I've said this all week now. I don't envy him. I think he's on a bit of a hiding to not. If he wins and wins well, then it's easy because no one adheres to Madrimov outside of boxing, really. And that's not putting him down. He's a great fighter, and it's not even saying he hasn't been promoted. Well, he has. It's just the hardcore public know who Terence Crawford is. Most of America won't know who Madrimov is, even though he's been fighting here. And if he loses or if he gets pushed really close, then it's he's had an off night against someone who's meant to beat easy. But Madrimov's brilliant and his quality and is a very good fighter. Crawford stepping up to his weight. Physically, the attributes are in favour for Madrimov as well. He's got a really live chance in the fight, but I still think Crawford has got more than enough to win and to look well in winning. And I can see probably very wide points decision, if not maybe get him late. But I hope Crawford, I don't think it is the case, but I was watching him against Spence. I'm just thinking, you see the greats, and I put him in that category now after doing what he did. For me, I think he's number one pound for pound fighter out there. And I'm watching, you think, that was perfect, and it might not get perfect again. That might have been the pinnacle for Crawford. He beat his main rival in the weight division. He made a 50-50 fight look one-sided, and we know Spence may not have been at the races, but all we can do is maybe hope that we've seen Spence at his best, and Crawford absolutely dominated him and looked like he was levels above and had more in the tank to go again. I'd like to see that now. I still think it's probably in there, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. You know what I mean? Every fighter in history has had just that one perfect night where they were unbeatable, and that could have been it. But if there's more in the tank from Crawford, then how lucky are we to get to see it, and I can't wait if it happens Saturday night. It'll be great because I'll be there in person.
So I'm going to ask him as well, Paul. Obviously, he's had a lot of success against Eddie Hearn fighters in the past, and Eddie's mentioned that he's hopeful that maybe this is one weight too many for Terence to move up in. But if Terence is to come through, there's been all this talk of facing Canelo Alvarez up at 168. There's 14 pounds he'd have to move up. It's a stone he'd move up. How would you think he'd fare against Canelo at 168? And obviously Emmanuel Noel, given that he's fought two of your brothers.
I wouldn't want to see it personally. You know, it'd be nice to see it if Canelo was a middleweight, then you've got a chance, but it's pointless, you know, in my opinion. But to be fair, I don't think Canelo's mentioning it much, and I think Crawford's probably only maybe mentioning it a little bit because he knows it's probably not going to happen. Not that he's scared or that he would be, just the impression I get, you know. I think he probably thinks it's a bit of a stupid question as well when he's being asked that, because the weight difference is just too much. But Canelo's phenomenal, and Crawford's absolutely brilliant and one of the best I've seen. So I probably wouldn't want to see it. But ability-wise, you know, you could ask a question who'd win out of a good lightweight and a heavyweight if they were the same weight, couldn't you? We all always have that little bit of a fantasy matchup thing, but no, I don't really want to see that.
With Canelo recently, Paul, and obviously we've just had the Berlanga fight announced, a lot of people are starting to look at it and suggest that maybe he's been cherry-picking recent opponents. Obviously the Golovkin trilogy, Triple G is very much so at the back end of his career. There have been years between the first and the second fights from the third. Jaime Munguia was very well fought, but had fought nowhere near that level. Obviously neither is Berlanga. I've missing somebody in between as well. Lost to Bivol. My mind's going blank, which is not great, but yeah, there's been a lot of talk. Is he cherry-picking opponents, and is he avoiding David Benavidez and maybe even David Morale? Do you feel like he's at that stage now where he's been a bit more cautious? Was it Jamal Charlo had to move up from 154 to 168? Do you think that he's been a bit more cautious with his options now?
At the end of the day, Canelo Berlanga, it's not the fight that many people want to see, but who else is offering to fight Berlanga? He's being avoided by a few, you know what I mean? There's not people there willing to just call him out and fight him and beat him and get him out the way. You know, he's fighting top fighters. Let's have it right. It's just we know he's Canelo and we want to see great fights. But I think at his level and his stage in his career, and he's had the loss to Bivol, even if he is picking the opponents, and it's just smart business by him. And I don't think anyone could ever criticise Canelo Alvarez for, you know, ducking anyone or avoiding anyone, because he fights them all, and he's beat the majority of them. A little bit of a step too far with Bivol, and it's still a fight I thought he could have won, to be honest with you. I still think he had enough to beat Bivol, and probably still does, but you've got to be right on the night, and I think Bivol was just wrong for him in styles. But no, I think we'd be a bit brash on Canelo, in my opinion, if we said that he was like cherry picking or ducking, because even if he is at this stage in his career, we can blame him. It's just about his money and cementing his legacy, and if he has a couple more losses on that legacy, he's going to take a big damage and a big knock. So if I was him, I'd probably play it safe myself, to be honest with you.
What do you think of a Berlanga fight? What do you think happens?
I think he'd be too smart, have too much. I think Berlanga will be a bit too predictable, a bit too, you know, it's hard to say inexperienced, if you know what I mean, but I think he'll be a bit too inexperienced at that level for Canelo. Canelo's ring craft is brilliant, and watching him up close, you get to see that, obviously, and he's beat some unbelievable names in boxing. And as I say, his resume shouldn't be questioned, but I think it should be pretty straightforward for Canelo, as long as he keeps it tight and keeps it, you know, simple and what he does best.
Moving away from Canelo, moving on to that Joshua-Dubois card. Obviously, Liam, your brother, returns against Josh Kelly. A fantastic fight at 160. What are your thoughts on it? Why do you feel like this is the right fight for Liam in terms of stylistically? He's had a bit of time out of the ring now since that defeat to Chris Eubank Jr. Why do you think that everything's aligned for this fight as his brother?
It's just another fight for Liam. At the end of the day, it's one that I've seen them both spar. You know, Josh Kelly's a nice lad. He's all right. He's talented as well. But Liam, on his day, will grind Josh Kelly down, beat him, outsmart him, outwork him, outthink him, and I think he's better in most departments than Josh Kelly. Josh Kelly will have other things to say about that. He'll think he's got the answers. He'll think he's too sharp. He'll be looking at Liam in the last fight against Eubank, because anyone wouldn't think he's finished, and that's understandable for them, but he's not. It wasn't age, it was a bad camp with bad injuries, and the injuries are now holding up in this camp and not there no more. So as long as Liam's on it, that's the thing with the last Eubank fight. Liam wins well as long as Liam's on it, and the one non-negotiable is that Liam is always on it, and in that one Eubank fight he wasn't on it, and that's where things went wrong. And if he's on it for this fight, it's the same again, in my opinion. I think he beats him and probably stops him late. I think he'd be too big and strong. He'll outwork him. He'll outsmart him in there. Liam's a clever fighter. Liam's ring craft's unbelievable as well. His variety of punches is really good. He's spiteful, and he likes that warfare, that mental warfare in there as well. Of I want to break you mentally as well as physically, And he's very much capable of doing that in this fight, a lot more times than he isn't of losers. So, in my opinion, I think Liam wins and wins well, obviously. But I'm bound to say that, aren't I? So I'm his brother. That's what people are going to be saying watching it. But Josh Kelly's dangerous. He's got to be given full respect, which Liam will and always does. But yeah, I can't see past Liam. And if Liam's on it, as I say, which he is now, then probably stop it late.
If Liam's successful and you look towards the future, I know you don't want to do that for him, but I know he said that they had previous talks about a potential Hamza Shiraz fight. He's obviously fighting Toledeni on the same card. I know he'd love to try and have a third fight with Chris Eubank Jr., but nobody really knows what's going on with Junior at the moment with his career. Where do you see his future lying? Do you think we could see him then cross paths with the winner of a Shiraz and Denny fight, especially if it's Shiraz?
Probably just whatever makes the best sense business-wise. And whatever's for the best money, or whatever's not for the best money but the best opportunity and the best, I'm sure he'd love to be a world champion at a different weight and a two-time world champion, but realistically, is that going to happen? Or would you rather take at this stage in your career a fight for a couple of million quid or a fight for the world title and half £500,000? It really is down to them business choices sometimes, but honestly, I don't know what he's going to be thinking about doing. I know him well, and all he'd be thinking about and focusing on is this fight, because this fight is really important to him now and really important for him in his career. So I don't think he'd be looking past Josh Kelly at all, and I'm certainly not.
Now, I did hear there had been a brief chat of the potential of Callum fighting Joshua-Dubois on that card instead of Willie Hutchinson, but from what I got told, that Callum didn't feel like he'd be ready in time. Obviously, he just got married in the summer and he wanted to kind of enjoy a bit of downtime. What is the latest with Callum? Obviously, September he weren't ready. Has he had any discussions of when he'd like to get back out?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't asked him anything about that. I just know that he isn't going to retire and he doesn't want to retire, and I'm happy with that, because he isn't old and his ability certainly wasn't lacking. A bit of inactivity and just losing to the better man on the night was the stuff with the scenario in Canada with Beterbiev, and that was it. Yeah, but he's back in the gym. He's training. He's having a go. He's playing golf a lot as well. He likes his golf. He's doing well with that. But I think unless it's going to be for a world title or an opportunity that's going to lead directly to a world title, it's going to be hard for Callum to probably, get motivated for these fights, I think, and he really wants to be a two-weight world champion. And
do you think he would have been able to be motivated for a Buatsi fight? I don't mean to interrupt you there, but just because of the magnitude of the fight, obviously boxing at Wembley, Buatsi's well thought of Olympian as well. Do you think he could have, if it had aligned, been up for that?
Well, in my opinion, and by the way, you've got the mic, mate, you interrupt anyone you want, but in my opinion, the winner of that fight has got to fight for the world title. And so you look at it that way and you get motivated, no problem for it. It's not just about the money. I think that's what he's saying. It's not money that's going to motivate him. It's the opportunity or the world title fight, or the opportunity of a world title fight. I'd like to see them fight. I really like Buatsi. I rate Buatsi. I think he's a really good lad, and ability-wise, he's very good. I'd love to see a fight with Callum and him. And the yard, it's a fight I'd love to see for Callum as well. One that I think he wins well, and the styles would be perfectly suited for Callum, in my opinion, in that fight. But again, it's all about opinions, and people would think Yard would beat Callum, so I'd love to see that. But I think if you offered him a bit less money for the world title, I'm sure he'd probably take that rather than a lot of money and not the world title. I'm not trying to price him out of any fight there or get his wages lowered, but as I say, he's his own man. I haven't spoken to him about anything like that really on record, so don't know what he's doing yet.
Callum's obviously had a great deal of success in his career, and you're talking about fights which he needs now, going to be ones which motivate him. That lack of activity, granted you have to take into account COVID and shows being postponed and what have you, but the last few years he hasn't been as active as what you'd like. Let's say he was to return once this year, go into next year, how many times do you think he would need to fight to really get back to his peak, his best, to be able to produce it in the ring?
I don't know, but obviously you know yourself, and anyone who knows boxing will tell you, I don't know, but the more the better. If you can have a couple of fights and then go into a world title fight, then that'll be brilliant preparation for him, especially after the layoff, because if he doesn't fight now until, let's say, October, then it's been January. That was his last fight, which is 9 months. So if he gets one in October and then goes again in January after that, then that's two in succession, and that's a good time difference, a good time frame between them to be active. But It all depends on what he wants to do. If Bivol wins that fight and keeps hold of all the 4 belts, he'll probably retire. I'm not speaking for him. He's my brother. I don't know. He's just my brother. I'm not his keeper, or and he doesn't. We haven't spoken about this, so it's me just sort of estimating and having a little guess at how he would think. But then obviously, if Beterbiev was to win and vacate all 4 belts, or if Bivol was to win and vacate all the 4 belts, then they're up for grabs, and there's going to be 8 people fighting for them, and Callum, in my opinion, and Neil will believe, is in them top 8 fighters in the light heavyweight division and will deserve one of them shots. Who he fights for, that will be another thing and another matter, but the rankings, he'll be pretty high up in all of them when they come out, or if they've been out. I imagine he's pretty high up in there, so they're the fights that can realistically happen, and I think personally that's what will happen. With whoever wins them, they'll be vacated and given up and broken up again for people to fight for.
What do you think happens in that fight between Beterbiev and Bivol?
I think if Beterbiev's on it, as he has been for his previous 19, then he beats him, he grinds him down, and he possibly stops him late. Bivol's quality, obviously, but Beterbiev, he's a different level of strength and explosiveness and power, and just sort of relentless in there. Even just the little shots, he closes that ring off, and it'll be a small ring again if it is him fighting. He'll close that ring off, and that's not a dig or a bitter. That's how it is. You see other fighters, they ask for small rings, and that's no problem. It's their ring. But he makes that ring even smaller. You know what I mean? The way he fights, and that's a compliment to him. He's really good at closing the ground off and closing the ground down and making the ring a small place for you.
I don't mean to stick around or go back to it, but you mentioned how he closed the ring down. He jumps on you straight away. It's what we saw in the fight with Callum. As soon as the first bell went, he was on top of him and pushed him back into the corner. Was that a shock to Callum? I know that he might have prepared for that eventuality, but it's very different doing it in sparring as opposed to when you're there in the ring looking across at the man who's just come charging towards you.
Yeah, you sort of know it's going to happen. You know he's going to try and cut the ring down from you, and as soon as we saw the ring, as soon as Callum saw the ring, you sort of know what the plan's going to be on the night, the way he's going to fight. But why wouldn't he have a small ring? Why would he be the champion and have a live challenger in there and your mandatory challenger, and give him a bit of an advantage by making the ring bigger for him? It's common sense. But obviously when you're in there, if that's how you're going to fight, you've got to close the ring down, and you want to make it as small as you can, so you have to work a bit less. He's just very good at that, closing the ring down. He's a predator, he's a finisher, that's how he fights. He likes to make the ring small and suffocate you and drown you, and that's exactly what he did in Quebec. That's how he fights. Every credit to him, and he's some fighter.
Just some fights to quickly get thoughts on before we wrap this up. On that September bill that we spoke about earlier, the main event, Joshua-Dubois, what do you think happens?
Well, theoretically and on paper, I think AJ should stop him, should knock him out, and it should be probably the middle rounds. That's probably where I'll be putting my money on, theoretically. But I didn't think Dubois would win his last fight. I saw something in Dubois when he fought Joyce, and then again when he fought Usyk, that I don't like to see in fighters, and I've been criticised for it, but go and ask any fighter what they think as well. It's old school, and you go out on your shield, so to speak, and not your knee. And I'm not having a dig at him saying that. That's just a fact. That's just what I've seen. So any fight where, in my opinion, it's going to get hard, he's got that in him. And I think this one will definitely get hard. But he has the power. He's on the front foot and a good momentum, a good run, and his confidence will be through the roof. And he'll genuinely be going in this fight thinking, I can knock you out as well, and I'm going to knock you out. And that alone will see him through that if it doesn't get hard, because this is heavyweight boxing. They're two massive punches. I think the advantages are in Anthony Joshua's favour, and as I say, as a betting man, that's where I'll be putting my money. But it's the heavyweight division, and he can punch and he can bang, Dubois as well. So it's never say never, but Joshua knockout.
Sticking with the theme of heavyweights, obviously back end of the year we do see that rematch between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury. Do you expect to see repeat or revenge? And your new best mate upstairs, Shakur Stevenson, reckons it will be revenge.
It could be revenge. To be honest with you, all the way in the build-up to that fight, I used to say years ago that I thought Fury was good enough to beat all of them, and he almost did. But Usyk is a different animal, and he's brilliant, and he's quality, and everything that he does is really, really good. And for Fury to beat him, Fury has to be on it, and I didn't think Fury was on it. And I think the Ngannou fight was a little bit of a wake-up call, even though he got really fit after it, got in shape, got his head together, got knuckled down, and came in really good. I think tactically, maybe fitness he looked a little bit tired, but that's what someone like Usyk will do for you. When you're in with someone like Usyk, he's got you thinking all the time and guessing all the time. And even though Fury was the bigger man, he didn't quite use, in my opinion, his tools and his assets as well as he should until probably the 6th or 7th round, and then the fight was in his hands, in my opinion. And then that big 9th round changed everything. Obviously, I thought it probably should have got stopped, but I'm glad it never, because it's sort of made it a bit closer. It's made this rematch very interesting now. If Fury's on, he's got a massive chance. So I couldn't really say whether it's going to be repeat or revenge. From a Fury perspective, and knowing them, you know, I'd like it to be a revenge. But how can you not like Alexander Usyk as well? He's one of the best people in boxing, isn't he, at the moment, and has earned it, deserved it with a good team around him. So I'll be watching it well, and I'll sit on the fence and get a few splinters in my arse for now on that one, and ask me again closer to it. As I say, I was backing Fury all the way until fight week, and then I switched. I went to Usyk, and I thought Usyk might grind him down late, to be honest with you, and we were close, but you know, it was a really good fight, good event to watch. All me and my missus, the kids were all on the couch screaming at the telly, shocked, like wondering what was going on, a bit like the Ngannou fight, but then not too shocked because we knew how good Usyk is, as most people do.
Just on the theme of Alexander Usyk, we saw him at the O2 Arena this past weekend watching a heavyweight clash between Joyce and Derek Chisora. Derek just rolled back for years as well. People have wanted to see him kind of step away and enjoy the money he's earned from the sport. What did you make of his performance? What would you want to see next for him? Because he said he wants 2 more fights at least.
I didn't want to see that one, to be honest with you. I said this on the night, and listen, Derek Chisora's not going to listen to words I say, and at the end of the day, my opinion means nothing to him. But them fights, they're gruelers, and they take a lot out of you. And you know, even on the night, he looked like he had a bit of concussion. And when he was speaking, and in the interview after it, you've been through the mill there. You've been to the well and truly drained the well dry that night. And I hope it isn't dry, because he will want to fight on. And I like the fella. You know, I want to see the fella happy and healthy in his retirement when he does retire. And I think I tweeted on the night, you know, every time I watch Chisora, I want him to retire, but I can't help screaming at the telly for him, going, go on, lad, go on, lad. Every time he's having to go back, because he's just so good to watch and entertaining to watch, when he's always give us great value for money. But I also put on the bottom of the tweet, you know, at what cost? And I want him to have his health when he's older, and I hope he is, but he's a grown man. No one's going to stop him. No one's going to certainly tell him to stop, and he's not going to listen to anyone. So if he's fighting on, I hope he has 2 good fights, wins them both, stays healthy, and then gets out relatively unscathed. But he took a lot in that fight, as did Joyce. But the braver man on the night, the one who wanted it a little bit more, like, in my opinion, won the fight. And as much as I was wincing watching it, it was great to watch, and it was really good value for money. And that's what he wants to do, Chisora, doesn't he?
We saw a young prodigy, Moses Itauma, stop Marius back in very, very good fashion in their bout. He went on Sky Sports, and they had that little game where you don't speak until you think somebody will give you a good fight. Only spoke when Derek's name was mentioned. A fight which you would wince at even more than what we did Joyce?
Probably, because he's really explosive, young, hungry, fresh, green but not too green. He's got a good brain on him, as people were saying on the night. You know, he studies the game. He's a student of the game. I love his attitude. You know, he's not too cocky, he's not too arrogant, but he knows he'll beat them, and he's sort of wanting to say that now, but not too much, so he doesn't come across as boasting. But I know deep down he's thinking it. And all them names when he kept quiet, there's an argument there that you'd probably agree with it. You know what I mean? He probably would beat the names that he said, in my opinion, at this stage. But there's no real rush with him. But obviously it's exciting, and there's still that possibility of the record being broken, isn't it, with him, which I don't think will happen. I've said that I can't see that happening in my lifetime, but you wouldn't rule it out with him if he was to magically get the shot.
Paul, just to end this on, when are you coming to Birmingham? When are you going for a mixed grill?
Whenever you want to take me. Every time you post it, my mouth starts watering. I think I've got to go there. I've got to go there, but you've got to come into Baby, and I'll go down the railway.
It's easily arranged, Paul, because the Railway Inn is the spot now. Everybody's going in boxing, so you know what you need to do. You need to get a fighter to box on. You need to get Zizo to box in Birmingham. That's what you need to do.
Okay, I know what. I'll just come down. I would drive for that mixed grill, no problem.
When we're back, we'll arrange it.
Okay, thanks, mate.